Today I'm going to show you a true-to-life online Octatrack lesson that I had with a student rather recently. They contacted me because they really wanted to know how to do sample mangling, and that's something the Octatrack does very well. It's a really deep and interesting topic. They had other Elektron boxes, they were rather familiar with the workflow, but they weren't vibing with the Octatrack all that much. I was getting the sense that they were kind of on the fence about selling it.
I was a little bit at the point of like, do I like the Octatrack? Do I need it? I kind of want a syntax. Do I want to like trade it up?
Perhaps looking to me to help talk them out of getting rid of their Octatrack. I asked them for permission to share it with you because there was so much that we went over that I think would be great for everybody who's interested in the Octatrack or already has an Octatrack. Well, hopefully you'll enjoy the video. Grab some popcorn. It's 25 minutes long of straight Octatrack hardcore goodness. If you don't know how to use the Octatrack quite yet, this is probably a good video for you too.
I have no intention of using this in a performance ever. This is a little setup that I want to kind of like sketch on and build loops to eventually just bring it to Ableton. But, you know, digging on the internet, so much of the stuff I see is really about like how to use it in a performance mode.
If you've been seeing a lot of that stuff, that's probably on my channel, because that's like, that's a lot of the focus that I do with the Octatrack. I mean, I do cover some territory when it comes to sample mangling, but what kind of music are you trying to make?
House techno area, some just like purely ambient stuff, a little drum and bass stuff here and there.
So I did start with mangling. That's where I started. How to use the Octatrack would probably help you the furthest because you already have an idea of what you would do if you understood how to use the machine. How familiar have you become?
I did sample once actually into the Digitakt.
I don't know how far into parts that you've gotten.
Not at all.
Or if you, okay, so let's just start there. The Octatrack, right? We got 8 tracks of audio on here. Each one of these tracks is stereo. And within the Octatrack, so like if you want to get like really good at the Octatrack, you will need to understand it in a very deep sense. It's a really deep machine, but there's some weird stuff that they don't tell you in the instruction manual. It's like, it's elusive, like how it's actually functioning, and like, do I need a flex track to sample? Like, what are the rules with sampling? Can I sample on any track? The answer is you can sample anytime, all the time on the Octatrack. There's 8 Digitakt samplers hidden inside the Octatrack. So the same way that Digitakt works, except for the Digitakt has this cool threshold thing. This samples in stereo with no limit to how long it can sample except for the memory. This you can sample 8 different times and share those sample buffers. So if you want to get into mangle territory, what we would want to do is learn how the recording buffers work and how we can manipulate live audio all at once. So like we could sample something on track 1, but have tracks 2, 3, and 4 listening to that same sample RAM, but have track 2 playing it pitched up an octave, track 3 playing it pitched down an octave, and track 4 playing it in reverse.
Oh, okay, cool.
Track 5 listening to all of those, resampling them, and chopping it. Like this is the stuff that we can do. So just to give you an example, what I'll do is I have the Digitone running into my Syntakt. If you're using my template, there's through tracks, and the through tracks require playback triggers to activate, right? Now, if you double press stop, it sends an off message that trigger sent on. That's turned off until you hit play again.
Got it. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does.
That's how a lot of this stuff works in the Octatrack. If you're familiar with any sort of like live coding stuff or any more esoteric forms of songwriting, you'll find that this works a lot like some old school tracker-based workflows. I mean, it is a tracker.
I love that.
Just displayed in a horizontal row as opposed to a vertical row. And instead of showing you all the tracks at once, it shows you just one. But let me show you how quickly you can do some sampling. So I do have the Digitone running into the Syntakt. We'll just get something, a cute little chord in here. Okay, so you can see it's lighting up here. It's getting into the yellowish. It's really quite green. It's also the color grade that I have. It can go into orange, just don't let it get into red. Red's gonna clip, we already know this. I haven't touched anything in the Octatrack. We've made no adjustments. This is literally how your Octatrack would be if you started a new project right now. This is important because this means that you can do everything that I'm doing right now without having to do any adjustments. Blank project, loads up with 8 static tracks, track level at 108, which is an attenuation, like all this weird stuff, how it boots up. The one thing that I do probably have on mine that you might not have on yours, it's in my project settings by default. This is on a Octatrack level, global level, not a project level. Under system and personalized down at the very bottom here, I do have quick record mode enabled. Quick record mode, so if you want to enable that, that's useful. Project, system, personalize, bottom, quick record mode. So what this does is makes it so that you don't have to hold a track down and then hit a button to record. It just means that whatever track we've selected, I'm now looking at, just like when I'm like, I select track 4 and I'm looking at amp menu, I'm looking at track 4, amp menu 4, which is associated with track 4. If I select track 3, I'm looking at, you know, track 3's whatever. If I select one of these tracks and I go over to my record editor here, the recording setup, I keep selecting these tracks. I'm looking at, it keeps changing the number. I'm looking at record setup 4. So I'm looking at recording buffer 4's setup. So this is also important because it's not like the Digitakt where you go into the recorder and you have one recorder. We can change every one of these tracks to have their own recorder. Like this one could be at 41, this one's at 59, right? They're all different. This is important because you can set them up differently to do different things, to listen to different sources. What I'm getting at here is that we have this chord on my Digitone. You can't see the fingering I'm making, but it sounds like a 7th chord, right? I have the setup in my recorder set as trig 1, 2, which means 1 press to start a recording, 1 press to stop a recording. And I can even turn on a quantization of those button presses so that it's, as the sequencer is running, that it will wait until it hits certain step increments to start and stop those recordings, so that I can get perfect loops out of my recordings. That's in the second setup under the quantized record length. If you set it to PLEN here, it stands for pattern length. This means that I can get a quantized recording at the scale of my current pattern length, which is awesome. And it refers to your track, not the whole pattern. If you have it set up on a per track basis, it'll record for that track's length. Right now it's set up on a per pattern basis because if you see here, we're at 16/16 scale. On the Octatrack, like the Digitakt, Digitone, Syntakt, you can change this pattern scale to be a per track basis. It's function, pattern, down here, and select per track. And now when we go back over here, we have these options. So here I can turn this up to, like, you know, if we're gonna keep it simple, 4 bars, right? So now I have a 16-step track, 4 bars maximum for the reset before it goes back to step 1, just like it would be on these other boxes here. Now that we have it on a per track scaling, this is at 16 steps, we have a maximum of 4 bars. We know that if I press this button, because of quick record mode, it'll initiate the recording based on what settings I have here. Record 1 will record inputs A and B. Record 2 will record inputs C and D. Record 3 will record the mains, which will be all that. Not necessarily a good thing. What if I have, you know, like it could be doubling the audio somewhere. So selecting what you want to record, this is how you resample. These are like your selections for bouncing down tracks if you want. If I was to select Q as a choice, I could hold Q and say, I want to bounce down tracks 5, 6, and 7 onto recording buffer 1. I'll turn these off and hit that button, and it would initiate my recording, and then I would have a bounce down of 3 tracks on that recording, which is pretty dope. For instance, I could just hit that button, see a little plus symbol happens, little wheel starts cranking. That's recording, because I hit rec 3, tracks 5, 6, and 7. There's nothing on there, but if you had something on there, you could bounce it all down to one thing and then slice it. And we could have it set to record that quantized to some step amount so that you have perfect little loops of some audio. It's a great way to layer drums, like you have, you know, a bunch of percussions and a bunch of randomization settings on there, like, you know, 20% chance to trigger, this, blah, blah, blah. You have no idea what you're gonna get. Percussion loops or melodic loops that are randomized every time they go around, and you can just keep saving them, saving them, saving them. They're all in stereo. Your effects are inserts, you can keep changing them around. It's really endless. Just that workflow alone is enough to get it all your money's worth from your Octatrack. We're just talking about using the Q for resampling. So that's already a lot. But say we wanna actually do some sampling, right? If I want to sample my Digitone, I'm looking at track 1. Again, we haven't changed any settings yet. Like, we can leave these just like this. Everything's still as it would in default mode.
Since we're here, I always wondered, what's the difference between A, B, and A plus B?
A plus B is dual mono. That's inputs A and inputs C, both in monophonic mode.
Oh, okay.
That way you can do 4, because you can do a maximum of 4 instruments at the same time into the Octatrack. If you did 4 instruments in, and you also did 4 through tracks, which are tracks that allow you to process the audio, but you can also set them up in the through track to just be an individual input. So you could have through track 1 be input A, through track 2 be input B, so on and so forth.
Okay.
4 separate tracks with their own send, return, and recording buffers. Because it doesn't matter if it's a through track, that recording buffer is there no matter what. If I change this track to a neighbor track, which doesn't do anything other than process the track above it, I go into this record setup, I'm still on record setup 4. There's no reason why this wouldn't work. I have a neighbor track right here, doesn't do anything, can't play back samples. I got my Digitone, making sounds. I'm gonna hit CD, and hit it again. And now, because it's a neighbor track, the audio editor doesn't work, right? Because neighbor tracks don't have an audio editor. However, function rec 3, edit this recording, because I'm talking about the recording buffer. We're not talking about tracks right now.
Right.
We're on recording buffer 4, and I'm looking at the recording buffers menu. I'm gonna skip over this neighbor track and just go right into its recording buffer. There it is. And there's that sample. I can even play it back on a neighbor track. I like to start here when I teach the Octatrack so that you understand that the way the Octatrack works is you have access to all the tools all the time. It's a matter of how do I put them into action. This is not something you're gonna learn in like the manual. I'm skipping you straight to this is how this machine works from the guts. So now we could take this sample that we have, we can crop it with a trim. Like if we wanna just get this chord. So I've cropped it down. If we hold function, that little dot that pops up, that's a zero crossing. Zero crossings are where there's zero amplitude at a certain time period. We want the zero crossings to be at the beginning and at the end of our sample. First one disappears just because we're controlling the last part. So it just doesn't alert us to the zero crossing that exists there. This will eliminate clicks and pops. But we got this sample, it works. We could start with some music just with this sample right here. I can go function rec3 again and go right into save this recording. Gives it a silly name, recording buffer 4, the date and the time. Save sample, assign it to myself. We could try, it's a neighbor track, so it won't work. It assigned it to recording buffer 4, not track 4, because it's a neighbor track. Okay. So it didn't work. So what we'd have to do is go into flex track, because it's on recording buffer 4. And now we can go to recording buffer 4, and there it is, in recording buffer 4. And I hit yes, and now I can sequence. This chord is playing in reverse. There we go, now it's playing forward. I've never seen that, that was weird. That playing in reverse was a literal bug. I'm pretty sure that was from us recording in a neighbor track and then going over. Some of the stuff I'm showing you is not stuff the Octatrack tells you to do. This is just stuff that you can do, just so I like to show people how it functions. So not necessarily gonna do this stuff, but I use these tricks all the time in my workflow. But now we have this playing our sample back. Right now it's being treated like a phrase sampler, like a 404 or an MPC, like it's supposed to get chopped in a second. If we want to treat it more like a one-shot, the kind of amplitude and filter envelopes we're going to use are going to be like attack decay, attack release. So if we want to treat this particular sound like a pluck, we go into our amp menu, turn the hold all the way down, and then we play with the release. Now it's working a lot like a Digitakt. It only can go up 1 octave and down 1 octave, unlike the Digitakt, which goes up 2 octaves and down 6. So we're already like getting into a place, we sampled 1 chord. I could throw a kick and a snare and a hi-hat behind this and a bass line and like, it would be music. But if we wanted to mangle it, we could actually load up another flex track and have this one also listen to recording buffer 4. But have this one play it pitch down, maybe in reverse. A zero crossing, so to get rid of that click. And I can give it some insert effects. So the second effects 2 is always going to have access to the delays and the reverbs. Effects 1 does not. So if I want to give this delay a ping pong delay so that it pans hard left, hard right each time it pings, turn the X on. Right now it's in tape delay mode. Lock would turn it into a beat repeat. I can show you that too. Here we go. Feedback starts at 0. I don't know why. LFO, modulate maybe that filter. If I turn it into send mode, it'll treat it like a send, but it's not a true send. It means other things can't use this reverb because it's set as a send. It just means that when I turn the mix down, it's gonna have a tail. This all started with a little chord on the Digitone, and we barely did anything on the Octatrack. But we're somewhere. We're like in a cool place. What if we want to capture this whole thing now? Let's go to another track. We'll make this also a flex track, but we'll assign it to its own recording buffer. So we'll use recording buffer 6. As I showed you already that another track can listen to the same recording buffer, right? Track 5 is using recording buffer 4, and it manipulates the audio independently because it's just audio living in some RAM. So over here, what we can do is go into our record editor here, and we could leave it on record length max, or we could record a 4-bar loop. So let's set it to 64 steps for 4 bars. And what we want to record, well, we could do the cue mode if we wanted, and we could cue up these instruments. We know it's on 4, we know it's on 5. We could set this to cue, and then while we're in this menu, this step editor is a it's a recording step editor. So if I hold this down, you see this lights up. This step is gonna record the cue. But every time this step sequencer hits that step, it's gonna restart the recording, delete the buffer, and start recording again. So these steps become a little weird. It's like, okay, well, how do I use them? I can't give them, I can microtime them, but I can't give them trig conditions. I can only give them microtime, which sucks. I don't know why they didn't give trig conditions, whatever, but it doesn't. But what you can do is this. Place a trig down, hold function, hit that trigger. Now it's this yellow trigger. It's not the same as these yellow triggers. This one is a, see how it's blinking? This is a one-shot trigger. The yes button will arm this to work. So now we have a button that will tell this recorder to record the cue specifically. I didn't have to turn these off because this is only gonna record the cue because this does what this tells it to do. This overrides this data. This data refers to what I hit with this button press. This is very clear about what it's doing. So we can have it record 4 bars. It's gonna record the cue. I want this track level to be at 127. Anything below 127 is an attenuation of the volume on that track. 127 is unity. And what's strange is that the cue is actually going to be mildly quieter just because of the way the amplifiers work inside here. So if you wanna match it, truly match it, you actually boost the cue plus 12. This is something I just learned from tinkering. So if you go plus 12 in the cue, it's gonna give you the extra volume that you need. And now what we can do is arm that recorder trig. I hit yes to arm all. I'm not in the step editor. I just went like this. And now I hit play. That recorder is recording. And there it goes. It's gonna be a perfect 4-bar loop. And there it is. So we just resampled this one chord that's been mangled. And now what we can do, technically, is turn off these tracks, put a playback trig, and now we can repitch this whole thing, or stretch it with time stretch if we want. Turn time stretch on, the rate to time stretch. This is the different kinds of time stretch algorithm. Normal is a pitch preservation time stretch algorithm. Beat is a percussion time stretch preservation. TSNS adjusts the transient detection for the beat algorithm. So we got some nice time stretch going. Let's make this longer. And now it's got all these extra steps that got added. Now we're in this cool ambient realm.
But it's playing back half speed right now.
Half speed reverse. Now if I play, pitched up an octave, and now it's playing at full speed in reverse, pitched up 1 octave. Full speed reverse, no repitching. Very nice sound. But this is when I think, you said sample mangling.
Yeah.
This is what I think of sample mangling. Like, this is not something you can do over here. And I can do this very quickly, right? Mm-hmm. I barely touched anything. We've changed like hardly any settings at all. We're just using recording buffers and understanding their functionality.
How do you get to the page where you lay down recording trigs?
So you can lay down recording trigs from 2 different menus. One of them is just in your record setup, which is function rec 1 or rec 2. Either one of these will let you look at your recording triggers. Because you're in the recording buffer setup, it defaults you to the recording trigger setup. But the other way to do it is to go into function plus bank and look at the track trigs. And these track trigs will show you down at the bottom, there's that recorder trig.
Oh.
Here's swing triggers, because you can do your own swing, which is weird and cool, I guess. Which, if you want to use swing on the Octatrack, it goes like this. You hold down function while highlighted on swing, and then the word all pops up. You don't want to just swing track 6. I mean, sure, you could find a use for that, but you usually want to swing your whole arrangement so that it sounds right. Hold function, turn this encoder, and this will swing every track. That's how you use like classic swing on the Octatrack. Slide trigs are a lot of fun too. You just put a trigger down, and it will slide from an unlocked value to a locked value. So this would be where you would have a locked value. It would slide to that value, and then it will slide back to the next value. It creates these interpolation values between different track triggers.
Oh.
So you can use it like a good example of this, because actually will sound really nice with our beautiful composition we got going on, is I could go into, let's go to track 7, and I'm gonna load up a sample. So I'm gonna leave it as a static track. I'll double press track 7. We'll go to slot 1, left, up through the navigation, right, down through the navigation. So I'm gonna go up to audio, which is where all my sample stuff is. CCWF is Adventure Kids waveforms. So these are single cycle waveforms. So they don't sound like anything. What we want is a saw or a square, because I'm gonna make a little 303 really quick. So we'll grab the saw because it sounds nice. So I select yes, now it's highlighted, that means it's selected. I go into my source menu, turn loop to on to make sure that it cycles. Hold function, these are all your different keyboards that you have access to. Chromatic would be the one I'm looking for. Now I need to go back in and do that envelope adjustment, because this one won't work. So now I can go into my filter, double press filter. I mean, I could put any effect in here, but filter is usually what ends up there. Give it a bunch of distortion. This is post filter, even though it's showing up here, it makes you think it's not. Go to 24 dB filter, because that's what the 303 is. And filter this down, give it a bunch of Q, tiny little bit of depth. What I can do is change this track amount, put it like 7, build these up, go up an octave, down an octave, and I don't know what. Actually, maybe we should start with this. What's cool is now we can kind of like, I'm gonna mute this real quick. I can show you what these slide trigs do. Pitch changes are there. Now it sounds like a real 303. Next track here. Let's grab like an electronic music type sound. A good thumpy kick. Oh yeah. Oh. Grab a snare like that. Into a master track if we want. Give us a master filter and a beat repeat. Go into project, system, audio, master. Make sure the track level's at 127 because this is all gonna get summed now, so we don't want to lose any of our volume. All right. Go to FX2. The delay is there by default. Turn lock on, tape off. We can do whatever we want with ping pong. We don't want tape because when it repitches or changes the timing of the delay with a beat repeat, it repitches it. It sounds like garbage. Turn the time all the way up or not, doesn't matter. Feedback all the way up, send all the way up. Send only has to be above 0, has to be 1 or higher to work. But if you have send at this at 127, this is 0, this is 127. If I assign this to a scene, it'll engage at the end, which I like. I have this turned off so that I can treat this as a dry wet mix as opposed to 2 different effects I'm cycling between. So now what I could do is like lock the send at 0, and we have this. This is making it go to 0. If I change the time to its max value. Not bad, right? So now if I like assign that to a filter as well. these greens, these are all tracks that have delays on them. Only this one is set up to be a beat repeat though.
Oh.
Check this out, we can program this into our sequence. Delay send 0, time 48, copy, just paste, time all the way, delay send 0.
This is all on the master track.
This is all on the master track, yeah. Cool.
Amazing.
It's definitely stuff, right?
Sufficient mangling achieved, I would say. Wow, that's pretty impressive. Oh, when you were doing the fills,
Yeah.
can you put fill trigs on top of regular trigs, or that's just the state that trig is in?
No, you can't. It does make sense.
Okay,
Does
cool.
that make sense? No. No, it does make sense, and the answer is no.
Got it. Okay.
That's you have one track for sample playback and everything. It is just what it is. You have those other 3 tracks for slides and shuffle or swing, I mean, and then for recorder trigs. And that's it. So very quickly, using 3 samples, we have something relatively interesting with some simple sampling techniques. I know I went really fast, so let me I'm gonna stop here and open this up.
That's good. Because, well,
Did this trigger any sort of questions?
no, I mean, I'm definitely convinced me. I'm like, I was a little bit at a point of like, do I like the Octatrack? Do I need it? Kind of want a syntax? Do I want to like trade it up? This is awesome. This is very, very exciting. So I'm keeping it.
All right, well, thanks for watching. If you're interested in getting lessons from me, you can visit patreon.com/EZBOT and sign up for the lessons tier. Alternatively, and the more common way to do it is to go to EZBOT.live and just book a lesson right there. It's very easy, it's very fast, you get access to my calendar, and we're off to the races like maybe in a matter of a couple of days. And it's often a very good time. Don't forget to like and subscribe this video, leave a nice comment, give it a thumbs up, and share it with your friends.